So good evening. I'm Dom DeMeo with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. I wanted to welcome everyone to our special event, Meet the Candidates. We're going to have a few candidates on tonight to speak to you in reference to their running platform. So thank you for being with us. I'm here to lay a couple ground rules. We need to be considerate, so conduct needs to remain as it should be in Sarasota and Bradenton, positive. So if there seems to be negative comments flying, then we're going to reserve the right to ask that person to leave the room so that the candidate can continue on. Everybody will be on mute, so we'll probably just be inside the chat that there will be any issues, and still we don't want any of those to happen as well. So please be considerate to both the people listening and the candidate as well. I want to introduce Susan Goldstein. Susan is our Government Affairs Committee Chair this year with the Alliance and also with Michael Saunders Commercial. So she's going to say a couple words and get us kicked off. So Susan, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dom. It's a pleasure to begin our series of 3 virtual Meet the Candidate sessions prior to our August 18th primary election. I want to thank the Governmental Affairs Committee as a whole and the subcommittee that led this event. My thanks to Elizabeth Corday with the Bradenton Area EDC, Casey Welch of University of South Florida, and Max Brandau with the Realtor Association of Sarasota and Manatee, who work with our amazing Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance staff to create this event. Thank you, Dom DeMeo, President of the Alliance, Dan Sider, Vice President, Janet Gonzalez, Events and Program Coordinator, and Amy Trice. The Government Affairs Committee mission is to identify, educate, and advocate issues of importance to the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. Today's event allows us to educate our members and strengthen and establish relationships with our public leaders. Thank you to our leaders for their service, to those who hold public office, and those who are willing to campaign to serve. And now we would like to begin with candidate for Manatee County Commissioner, District 7, Ed Hunzeker. Ed, thank you.
Ed, you're muted. All right, let's try that. Did that work?
You got it.
Am I unmuted?
We hear you.
Oh, there you go. Well, thank you for the time to be with the great folks from the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. I've watched the organization grow over the years, and I'm very proud of the work that you do. And it's very interesting to be in this role at this point in time. So let me begin. My name, again, is Ed Hunzeker. I'm spent 12 years as a Manatee County Administrator. Before that, I came down from St. Louis in 1988. In St. Louis, I was the Chief Financial Officer of a Interstate Compact Authority. When I came to Florida, I was the Assistant County Administrator in Hillsborough County. My specialty is finance and government. I've got an undergraduate degree in accounting and a master's in business administration, both from St. Louis University. I have been the finance guy for almost all of that 50 years of government service, the last 12 years with Manatee County. But when I came down, I was the Chief Financial Officer for Hillsborough County, and in the world of finance, I was responsible for the financing of the Yankee Spring Training Facility in Tampa, the hockey arena, Amalie Arena, the football stadium, and I had my fill of sports. And then I decided it was time to be a county administrator. So I went off to Osceola County for 3 years before coming to Manatee County, a little place in heaven for me. I've truly enjoyed the time in Manatee County. But when I came to Manatee County, it was interesting that the county seemed to be at odds with about everyone. We were at odds with the school board over the location of MTI on 70. We had anxiety with all of the cities over a proposal for a charter form of government, which would the cities thought would diminish the authority of cities. There wasn't many people that the county got along with, and so I said to the staff at the time, our job was to make friends. We joined about every organization we could in an effort to communicate what it is that the community wanted from their local government. So we began an exercise, created a neighborhood services department that tracked down the leaders of every neighborhood in Manatee County so that we could communicate with them about the needs and the wants of the communities, so we could dialogue with them rather than the government dictating what the community wanted. We would have firsthand knowledge of community needs. And the community needs vary from, you can imagine, from the islands to parish, from parish to Onico. Everybody had their needs and wants, and they were willing to talk to us. And we were willing to listen. And that was a challenge. And then we needed to organize a government so that the government could respond to those needs. We created not only the neighborhood services department, we created an outreach operation in South County along 41 called the District, which was redeveloped the urban core of the county, which is the oldest part of the county. We've embarked on a program to fund roads through public-private partnerships, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. We needed to make sure that the county was responsive in the way of trash pickup from the utility system, and we wanted to do it all within our means. And our means became troublesome almost immediately when we got poor quick in 2007. The bottom fell out of the real estate market. Our revenues decreased substantially, and I was committed to the act of never raising property taxes in my 50 years of service. We set about to reduce the government by $122 million. We reduced position count by almost 300 positions. We created a program to incentivize businesses that created jobs, and we proposed to the Board of County Commissioners a plan to put $100 million worth of construction programs, infrastructure projects out into the public domain to put the public back to work. That, in part, was our public-private partnership efforts. We built 301. We worked with SMR to build the roads in Lakewood Ranch. We did that on partnerships, and it's worked out quite well, and I want to bring that back to the fore because there's a number of roads that need to be built in the county. But we'll get around to the future here in a minute. We have, in the Board of County Commissioners, changes over time, but as I sit on the dais, I've worked for politicians over the years, but I've never actually been one. Because I was a county administrator, having to work for both Republicans and Democrats. Early on in my career, I was a county auditor in St. Louis County, and I had to work for both Republicans and Democrats, and I was a no party affiliation. And then I joined the International City County Managers Association that prohibited political involvement. And so over the years, I saved some money because I've never written a check to a politician. I've never gone to a political party that after a politician wins, they do their thing and I did mine. And now that I'm retired, I think I want to help that side of the workforce in making decisions as to how it is that this community is going to grow. I started an exercise back in 2011 called How Will We Grow? It was taking the employees and trying to think out 20 to 30 years and having them begin that communication with all those neighborhood leaders on what they thought the community would look like. That morphed in 2015-16 into an exercise called Back to the Future, where we took our millennials that work for the county, that'll be around 20 or 30 years from now, set them loose out into the community to talk about what changes have taken place over the last 20 years. And when you think 20 years back and walk through the years, you get to an oh wow moment. Geez, things have really changed over those 20 years. Well, if you think that's something, try and think out the next 20 years. Because when I came here, there was about 300,000 people in the county. There's 400,000 now. And 20 years from now, there'll be exceeding 500,000. people want to retire and they're going to come to Florida, and we can't stop them. There is no wall of the Hillsborough line. And so we have to figure out what are we going to do and how are we going to deal with people that are going to come here. So we've embarked on that effort, and it's part and parcel of why we want to redevelop the urban core. Why I think it's important to rewrite the comprehensive plan. People around the county take great pride in the fact that we have an award-winning comprehensive plan. Well, it was won an award in 1988. And I don't think anybody drives around in a 1988 car. But why is it that we celebrate this comprehensive plan that it's a little outdated? And it is the guiding light to the Land Development Code. And in that Land Development Code are rules and regulations that just strangle small businesses. And I want to take that on, if I'm elected, to streamline those documents, make it easier for businesses to do what businesses do, which is employ people. As I said, my wife and I have 3 sons. We educated them in Florida, and they all left town to get jobs after they graduated from college. And I said to myself, what are we doing wrong? So most of that 12 years in Manatee County government, I was devoted to job creation. When I said we put a $100 million construction program on the street in order to keep the construction industry working in 2008, 9, and 10. We also helped the Economic Development Corporation get off the ground and come out from under the chamber and be its own entity and work towards job creation. I recommended to Board of County Commissioners an economic incentive program for businesses that create quality jobs. It's still used today. If you create fin jobs that pay 115% of the average wage in the county, and they come with benefits, you're eligible for an economic stimulus program from the county. It's worked very well. I think the poster child for that is Feld Entertainment, but there's a number of other businesses that have done quite well in Manatee County through that incentive program. The county also prides itself on the fact that not only do we have economic incentive program, but we pride ourselves in how fast we can respond to businesses and their needs in the permitting arena. The building department, as most of you might know, is been streamlined under John Barnott, who sits on the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance board, I believe. And during his tenure, we've been able to reduce the staff by half, but the productivity has doubled. And we have lowered the building department fees every year for the last 3 years, perhaps that's going on 4, because people are so efficient in what they do. We don't need the revenue because the revenue can only be spent on building department activity. We can't take building department revenue and spend that on libraries or parks or building roads. It's restricted in our budget system by state statute. And that's the challenge that we have in government, and why I think I'm the candidate for this position. It's understanding the county's financial affairs and how it is you can make them work for the betterment of the community. I've spent a lot of years in this business, and I'd like to be there on the policy side to help direct what happens in the future. Where are we going to be 20 years down the road? What's the libraries going to be like? How many libraries are we going to have? When I came, there were 6. Today, there's still 6. 100,000 more people, we still have 6 libraries. But we've got one plan for Premier Park. That's the 70 acres I asked the board to acquire on top of Premier Sports Complex to help bring government services out to Lakewood Ranch. It's one of the key things that I'd like to see get accomplished sooner rather than later. Create an atmosphere of a community gathering place, an amphitheater, a place for concerts, for 4th of July fireworks, library, parks, trails, bring neighborhood services out here, building department services out to Lakewood Ranch. There's no reason why we have to travel 20 miles into Bradenton to do business with the government. We should bring some of those government services out here to Lakewood Ranch. And that's a critical thing that I would like to make sure happens sooner rather than later. I am a very impatient fella, and I think my staff would tell you that if you talk to any of them, I would tell them, if you can do it tomorrow, don't. let's do it today. Don't let anything dawdle. I looked at 44th Avenue as a project that when I came, the county was fits and starts with building 44th. In the meantime, 70 and 64 were getting more and more crowded. And the idea is we can give reliever to that if we can get 44th finished. So it's in the final throes of building 2 bridges, one over the river and one over the interstate. That should happen in the next 5 to 6 years. That's a major reliever road. But what's the road after that? And what's the road after that? What are we going to build and how are we going to build it? So my trust is to communicate with the public, ask them what they want, which is part of my genetics, and then try and figure out how to get it done in the most efficient way, most effective way, and make sure that the people in the community are happy about the community they live in. I like to say we live in paradise, and I'd like to keep it that way, and I'd like to be part of a policy board that directs the activities of the government on a day-to-day basis so that we can look down the road over 20 years and be proud of what it is that we have. I don't know how long you want me to talk, but I think I've told you about what it is that I am and what it is that I'd like to do and why I think I'm a candidate to make it happen. And if I have a few more minutes, for those of you that received a robocall yesterday, it did not come from me. I have never been in contact with anybody from Black Lives Matter, nor have they tried to contact me. So there's never been a conversation. And Ricky Wells is a good friend of mine, and we've talked on the phone on any number of occasions. And he knows that I would never support defunding the sheriff's operation. So that was just a little political gamesmanship happening yesterday. Kind of disrupted my evening with the phone calls and emails I received. But that's politics, and as I said before, it's not for the faint of heart. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or you can just tune me out. Thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you, and good luck to the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. You're a fine organization made up of great people, and I'd like to continue to be part of your audience. Thank you, Don.
Well, thank you, Ed, and we appreciate all you've done for Manatee County over the years, and I'm sure that your legacy there will always be known. So thank you for what you've done. We're going to direct the questions, if you don't mind, to your website or to you directly.
Sure.
So at the end of our 3 days, our plan is to send an email out to all the participants that have been at all 3 sessions and give contact information. But for those that are here tonight, info, that's info at lwrba.org. If you send an email into info and you need Ed's contact information or website before we get an email out to you, please direct it to that address and we'll get you the information before that. So Ed, thank you for joining us this evening, and I wish you well in the rest of the how many 14 more days.
It can't come soon enough.
All right, have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Be well. Bye-bye.
All right, so next on the agenda is George Cruz. George is also running for County Commissioner, District 7 in Manatee County on the Republican ticket, and will be up against Ed, who you just saw. So George, I know you were in the waiting room. I don't know, I see you're not there anymore, so I'm hoping you're now in the main room. George Cruz, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, there he is. So George, welcome. We're glad to have you this evening, and you have 15 minutes to address the audience. You have about 50 people in the crowd, so
All right.
glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be here. Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure what the format was, but I guess it's just more me speaking to you. If you have questions or anything, I don't know how you're doing it, but I'm more than happy to answer anything at any time. But at this point in time, I think this stage in the race, everyone pretty much has heard my bio, but for the sake of keeping it all in one place, my name is George Cruz. As Dom said, I am running for District 7. It's the at-large seat for Manatee County for County Commission. And little bit of background on me. I grew up down in Sarasota, graduated in 1993 from Cardinal Mooney High School down there. My family's been down in Sarasota since the mid 1980s. They're still all there. Both my parents, virtually all of my aunts and uncles, everyone still lives in Sarasota except for me. I left Sarasota, went up to University of Florida, have a degree in finance and a degree in management from Florida. And then I fell into commercial real estate straight out of undergrad. And that's pretty much everything I've done my entire life from a work standpoint. I worked at Raymond James Tax Credit Funds initially and did low-income housing tax credits. Essentially, we would underwrite the transactions. They're predominantly development oriented, and acquire the tax credits, put them in the funds, and sell them off to corporations that could use those tax credits. And before that, I didn't really think about going into real estate. I just happened to end up in real estate. But that's where I really fell in love with it, and really fell in love with multifamily and affordable housing as well. Just something I've always kept track of. So wanting to expand further into real estate, I left Raymond James after a few years and went up to Columbia for my MBA. I see Susan on the call there. Got my dual degree in real estate and finance up at Columbia, and stayed up in New York for a few years, doing short-term senior bridge loans on commercial real estate, pretty much throughout the country, predominantly in the Northeast. And once my son was born up there, and my wife said there's zero chance for raising a kid in the city, we moved down to Orlando with the same company, and then worked our way back here. When I got back here, it was January 2009, December 2008. But in January 2009, still in the downturn, predominantly caused by real estate and finance, I ended up starting to run a fund actually in Lakewood Ranch called Vesta Equity. It's still an ongoing concern down in the business park, and ran that fund for about 7.5 years. I was the managing director and had to hire all the people, put the business plans, and do virtually everything in that fund for 7.5 years. Got a little burned out from it, decided to spend some time with the kids, do some things on my own, got my sales license, ultimately got my broker license, started doing brokerage on the multifamily side, and recently got back into finance, started up a new company, Pursuit CRE, which is kind of vertically integrated. It is a brokerage for multifamily, predominantly on the workforce housing side, but it also has a finance arm to finance all kinds of asset classes, but mostly multifamily. And most recently, which was starting up in the fall until I decided to do this, I was setting up Pursuit Impact, which is going to be a social impact capital arm to it, to work with investors to acquire naturally occurring affordable housing, if you will, your workforce, middle market complexes, to retain the affordability on them. And then I started running for office. So some of that all kind of went on hold. But around town, I went through Leadership Manatee a couple years ago. I sit on the board today. I'm a member of Bradenton Kiwanis, Sarasota, Bradenton Columbia Club, which I was on the board for years, just stopped being on the board this year. I'm on the Manatee County Affordable Housing Advisory Board, the City of Bradenton's Affordable Housing Board, Chambers Attainable Housing Task Force. Pretty much it has to do with affordable housing or workforce housing. I'm involved in it. And that's part of what I saw going on or not going on in Manatee County. And one of the things I believe I bring to this board when running is what we're lacking is real finance and private sector experience on our board. We have Steve Johnson over in District 3, and in the fall, he told me he was not going to be rerunning. And I thought that was an important skill set that we're going to be losing on this board. And that's when I really started thinking about it, because I went through Leadership Manatee and saw the goods and the bads of Manatee County and of our board, and thought there's a lot of ways somebody with a deep background in finance, a deep background in real estate could help what really are some of our more critical issues and concerns in Manatee County right now. So got it running. I've spoken to virtually everybody in Manatee County these past 7 months. And people ask me, what am I going to do on this board? Well, first and foremost, we need to fix our overall quality of life. We've got a budget with, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions, an excessive amount of reserves. We hold 20% reserves across the board, another 10% in budget stabilization. We hold extra reserves for CIP, for landfills. We got about $500 million in reserves, which, as I tell everyone, is essentially interest-free loans from everyone in Manatee County. I just believe we should be using our money, or your money, to improve your quality of life. And if we're not going to improve your quality of life with it, there's no reason we should be holding it, making essentially zero return. We should give it back to you. So that's number one, is looking at that. And I know that's been talked about by a lot of candidates recently. And it's always talked about as a result of the potential recession and what we're going through. But this was something I was talking about back in January and February, because I thought the budget needed to be trimmed down and need to be focused on with a little more critical eye of somebody from the outside looking in, as opposed to somebody on the inside looking at that budget. I just don't think you're going to get an unbiased view of it from somebody who's had a real handle on that budget. As it relates to my background in real estate, I think we're going to have growth, whether we want to or not. That's just a fact. There's a UF study that said between 8,000 and 10,000 people a year are going to be moving here. If you assume about 2.5 people per household, that's almost 4,000 housing units to break even. And we're seeing a real problem with housing affordability right now. 47.5% of the people in Manatee County are paying over 30% of their income in housing, and that's just not sustainable. And when I mention this to people, I tell people, having housing that makes logical sense, having reasonably priced housing, is not just about putting people in households, although it is, but it transcends that. It touches every aspect of our community. Because right now, every year, a few of my kids' teachers leave and go someplace else, because a lot of them don't live in Manatee County right now. They can't afford to live in Manatee County right now. And when you start living in Pinellas, you start living in South Hillsborough, and realize you're commuting an hour to get to work when you can just get a job nearby, we lose those teachers. So that affects our education level. It affects our school grade. It also affects our infrastructure, because right now, people are living out of town, out of the county, and they're driving 45 minutes to an hour on our infrastructure. And then we talk about how we need to spend more money fixing roads, widening bridges. But the reality is, there's different ways of fixing infrastructure. One way is to use our money and improve it and widen it. The other way is just to put less cars on it. And, so I've been pushing for, sustainable and inclusive growth and development through non-monetary incentives to encourage infill location developments and higher density and smaller units, to essentially create some level of affordability by putting people closer to their employment bases, putting people where we already have existing infrastructure and services. It's just better off for the entire community. It causes less harm to the environment. It causes less usage of our infrastructure, and costs us less money, honestly, because I always tell everyone, if you can convince someone to build you 2 500 square foot units and charge $800 a month, or they can build one 1,000 square foot unit and charge $1,200 a month, they're going to build the 500 square foot units. It's just, it's economically sound for them. It's more profit for them. But they've essentially given Manatee County 2 reasonably affordable housing units that can be afforded by teachers and first responders and so forth. So, I think there's ways we can manage this, coupled with some of the subsidy stuff, like Sadowski Fund, which each and every year I call up Will and I call up Tommy and I yell at them for getting rid of it. And this year we thought we had it, but obviously there was a situation and we lost the vast majority of it. And part of the 2 boards I'm on, both the city of Bradenton and the Manatee County board, allocates those funds, and we don't get to do a whole lot on the board because we don't really have any funds to allocate. But hopefully Governor DeSantis is trying to make that a priority, did make a priority this year. It just got lost in the veto process at the end. And, that's something I'm going to work on advocating for when I'm on this board. Another thing I plan on doing is working on our employment base. And as I said, I ran VEST. I basically created VESTA back in 2009. And we're a small fund, but we're still 8 people. And the people I had to hire, I hired one person from South Florida, one person from University of Florida, one person from St. Pete. We just didn't have the employment base here because we have great higher education facilities like USF and SCF and MTC and New College, but it's a chicken and egg thing. We just don't have the full employment base here, the diversification of employment base of finance and tech and so forth that young professionals want to be in. So they leave and they go to downtown St. Pete and they go to Tampa and Orlando and Atlanta. And we lose that skill set, which I think is a shame because we've got these great higher education feeders, if you will, that really should be feeding our employment base and our skilled citizens and encouraging new companies to come here. But, that takes 2 things. Number one, it takes providing them with a reasonable cost of living to stay here, which we already discussed. The other thing is, really working on mentoring them and showing them that there is a future in Manatee County. And, part of that is just, working with who we do have right now, because we have some great assets we can leverage off of, from Port Manatee to LECOM to IMG and all of our sports medicines and sports sciences and abilities to keep people here. And therefore work with people like yourself, work with people like, Sharon with EDC and Manatee County Chamber, and really start bringing in a meaningful, diverse group of employers, because what we have now is overly cyclical. And that's why whenever we have a downturn in 08, 09 or a downturn right now, when you're focused heavily on tourism and service industry and real estate industry, you're just going to ride these cycles endlessly. And, at some point in time, we need to take a step back and say, let's come up with something a little more diverse for everybody in Manatee County. It's just more sustainable to the future of our community. And the last thing I'm planning on doing on this board is honestly just bringing a private citizen voice to it. I know that's a little qualitative and doesn't have a whole lot of tangible aspect to it, but there's a real value to it. My family has had a company in Manatee County since 1992, and they employ hundreds of people, and they've had to deal with policies, some good, some bad, from Manatee County as well as Sarasota County as well as federal policy. I've seen the good and bad of it because I've been on this side of it. When I ran Vesta, we had policies, good policies, bad policies. My family, my kids at school, we're subjected to these policies. I've never been in government my entire life, never even run for government in my entire life. And so I don't come into this with preconceived notions of policies. I don't come into this with precedent on how we did things in the past or how I manage something. I bring a private sector, private citizen view to this, and that's the view I'm going to take. And we have 7 county commissioners. And so we should have 7 diverse and unique voices. That's going to make the overall conversation better. It's going to make the overall policies better for everyone in Manatee County by having people who have been in each different walk of life. And I don't think having an entire board of county commissioners with deep government experience helps us, because they're doing things on how government should do things. I'm going to do things on how the private sector does things. And I promise you, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, talking to Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance, but the private sector will almost always do a better job than the public sector will. They're going to do it cheaper. They're going to do it more efficiently. They're going to do it faster. And they're going to do it a little more outside the box and creative than any government has ever been able to do anything. And that's the board, or the view I'm trying to bring to this board. So that's pretty much my spiel. Like I said, I'm coming here as just an ordinary public or private citizen trying to add a voice to our board, because I truly think my background in finance, my background in real estate, and just my background as a private citizen, seeing the good and bad of government is something that's sorely lacking and something that will be beneficial to Manatee County.
George, thank you for your time. I would say your background of the area as well. You left that out, having spent the time you spent in the 2-county region. That's not something you see from a lot of people within our area. Most people are 4, 5, 10 years, and you have many more than that here in the 2 counties. So we wish you well. We're
35 years ago?
That's more than normal, and probably more than the age of some of the people watching you here tonight. So, so that.
Hey, I'd still be the youngest person on the board, so don't make me act old here.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming tonight, and hopefully this is good for you. We'll be back again in the next election as well. So we wish you well on the 18th, and hope everything goes the way you want it to be. And thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
So to our group, our next candidate is actually current County Commissioner in District 1, Mike Moran. Mike is also the chair currently there in the County Commission for, and I think I may have said Manatee, so hopefully I didn't, but maybe Sarasota County is what I meant if I didn't say it right. So Mike Moran, welcome this evening, and thanks for hanging in. I know you came in early, but thanks for hanging in, and the floor is yours. Thanks for being here.
Mike, did you call in with a phone number? I'll have to unmute one of those. Maybe you can put it in the chat. Let us know which one it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, you can hear me good now, I hope.
Yep, you're clear.
Thank you, Dom. Yeah, first off, I just love this format. Sorry for the technical difficulty there at the beginning, but this just uninterrupted 15 minutes is just, I think, so healthy for voters to be able to hear what candidates have to say uninterrupted. But it's so strange sitting in that waiting room. You're literally staring at a white screen waiting to pop on. But again, I appreciate the time here. I thought what I'd do with my time here is I'm going to break it up into 3 different categories. One is just a few minutes on my personal life, talk about the business climate in Sarasota County, and then maybe finally end with some political things that I think are worth talking about. But in my personal life, been married to my incredible wife, Lori, for 27 years. I tell everybody any chance I get, I just can't do what I do in business and in life without her. She's the Chief Operating Officer for Teen Court here in Sarasota County, and they just do great stuff there. But we have 2 amazing children. My daughter, Lena, who's the Executive Director for the Republican Party of Sarasota here, as well as a field organizer for the Trump campaign. And she's a University of Florida graduate, and she's 23. And my son, we call him Mikey, and my son Mikey, he's 21. He's also a student at University of Florida. He's a senior there, a mechanical engineer, and he is in a really cool opportunity right now. They hired him at SpaceX, and he took a 6-month stint. He's actually in Brownsville, Texas, as we speak, on the launch pad for SpaceX. And people that watch that may have seen the launch that tried to happen yesterday, which looks like it'll happen today for Starship SN5. But he's just doing great things there at University of Florida. I'm a Michigan State University graduate in finance. 34 plus years in the insurance and payroll business. We've lived here for 20 years, going on 20 years now in Sarasota. We're originally from Michigan, and I kind of love telling the story of how we got here for people who have lived here a long time. Sometimes you forget how amazing this place is. We owned a payroll and insurance company up there, and we sold it. And this is when the kids were little. They were literally still in diapers. And we had a life decision to make. We were like, do we want to start with a new business in Michigan, or do we want to look around the country, which we did. We looked all over this nation for a place to live. We looked in Richmond, Virginia, where my dad lives. We looked in the Carolinas. We looked in California. And frankly, that was a little too odd for me. I even looked on the east coast of Florida. My vacation as a kid in Hobe Sound, Florida, and just that wasn't a fit for us. And I tell people this because, memories get short. 20 plus years ago, you plugged in the phone cord into the wall, and my wife was on the internet, and Sarasota came up the 3rd nicest place in the nation to live. We never had any exposure to it. We left the kids with my in-laws and did a long weekend here, and we just instantly knew this is where we wanted to live. We just fell in love with it. And we went home, and we packed up everything we owned, and we left everything we knew and everything that we were used to, and all our loved ones and moved here to Sarasota, Florida, literally not knowing a single soul, not a single person. We had to we were putting my daughter into kindergarten at the time, and we literally had to get her opinion on to get a babysitter for our kids. And so I tell people that because there's people that are doing that as we speak in this country, looking for a place to live, especially given some of this COVID environment that's going on. But the part that life gets in the way on this is that when we brought them here and they were in diapers, never crossed our mind that they would maybe leave us and go live in another community from where we're from up in Michigan, as most people don't move away from where they're from. They live by their grandparents and parents, probably not more than 10 miles away. And all of a sudden you fast forward now, and my son is in Texas, and I'm going to do everything humanly in my power. And the reason I got involved in this, to make sure we have career creation in this community to attract and retain these young adults, including my own. So it was one of the main reason I got involved in this political environment, for sure. So when we got to Sarasota, we started another payroll company, ultimately sold that to ADP, started another insurance company and sold a majority share of that interest to my current partners, which are just wonderful folks. I won't bore you with all the boards that I've sat on, but literally my family has thousands, I'm not exaggerating, we have thousands of hours of community service here. The one that I'm was most amazing opportunity for me. I was appointed by the governor to sit on the Southwest Florida Water Management District. They literally control, at the time we were there, $500 million in cash, not assets. They had $500 million in cash. It's just an amazing opportunity. But that ultimately led into me getting into discussing going into an elected position rather than these appointed positions, which ultimately I won that election in 2016. Changing gears on the business climate for Sarasota, hopefully the entrepreneurial experience that I just described to you, everybody on this call, especially a business group, I get it. I understand the pain that a lot of employers deal with of just the pressure of keeping revenues up and keeping expenses under control. I completely get it. So, when I sit in this seat, many times people come and say, well, how is the government going to deal with this or that? Or what is the government going to do about this for me? And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir again on a business group here, but many times, frankly, most times, the answer is for the government to simply get out of the way of the private sector and let them do their thing. As a matter of fact, I think Mr. Cruz was talking a little bit about that. And it's just an incredibly simple formula that gets lost sometimes, if you ask me, is, keeping taxes low and keeping regulation and oversight at an absolute minimum. Of course, everybody knows on this call it's necessary, but just keeping it as a minimum, at a minimum. And any paperwork and fees that are necessary in any type of transaction, make sure they're super easy to understand and comply with. And, it's just that simple thought pattern as an elected official can literally change a community. And frankly, some would argue in this political climate, it could change a country, frankly. So again, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir on that, but I did want to take a minute. Since I've been involved in the political office, I had my most rewarding, proudest moment was just a few days ago, actually. I was endorsed by the Observer, but they wrote a little article, they summarize candidates and put a little article together. And it's probably worth noting that noting in my campaign, literally, I have every single endorsement. I'm Christian Family Coalition, highly qualified, the realtors, the firefighters, Women for Trump, Sheriff Tom Knight, you name it. But this one with the Observer, they did a little summary, and I promise, Dom, I'll just read it real quick. It's not long at all, but it says, when you're elected to public office, voters elected you to do what you said you were going to do. It's the second part that hangs over many politicians. They represent everyone, and they feel the urge to want to please everyone. They want to be liked, and they want to be reelected, so they play it safe. All the above comes to mind when evaluating incumbent Sarasota County Commissioner Mike Moran versus his opponent. Moran has performed as he said he would. He recognized the importance of creating balance between protecting Sarasota's gorgeous environmental landscape and developing our business community. A healthy balance is critical to the long-term success of our community. And it just finally said Moran knows well the type of economic and governmental framework county government needs to create to allow economy to flourish. Again, it might seem trivial to some on this call, but you know, my whole life has been steeped into this since I've been elected, and just to be recognized for that was just a super proud moment. With that said, you know, everybody on this phone call knows the government has to be involved at some level in your life. And any time that I was responsible for that, I just, again, very simple principles is that I continuously, to this day, and have since the beginning, put healthy pressure on staff and any of our vendors and any of our contractors that they fully understand this is not their money. It is taxpayer money, and make sure that they understand that and frankly respect it. And I'll give you a specific example to that. Is I think Mr. Cruz mentioned your EDC there, which is fantastic. Of course, we have our EDC here in Sarasota County with new leadership, which I'm thrilled about. And we have Visit Sarasota County here. So, you know, EDC is a separate board, separate executive director, but they answer to Sarasota County taxpayer money. And then you Visit Sarasota, it's the same concept. These are vendors of the county that do an excellent job, but it's taxpayer money that go to these organizations. And just literally as soon as yesterday, I had a sit-down meeting with Virginia Haley, who runs Visit Sarasota and leadership of EDC, and said, listen, if we are trying to attract these businesses from all over the country for sports medicine or marine sciences related to moat, or bring engineering firms from around this country, and then we have EDC, Visit Sarasota spending millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to attract folks to come visit us, is why can't we mesh those worlds together and make sure, especially in the environment of Facebook and this geofencing, that we can get very specific on how we attract these folks to our community, that, hey, come visit us, and by the way, bring your business here. So I just, hopefully that's an example of just making sure we're efficient with taxpayer dollars. Lastly, a couple political things here, and then I'll wrap up. You know, I hope the goal here is in this is, you know, highlighting these candidates, is that ultimately is the voter is trying to figure out who to support in this. And I appreciate the environment uninterrupted to just kind of, you know, explain where you stand on these things and hopefully highlight some differences. You know, there's a lot of candidates out there just make lots and lots of promises here. Specifically related to me is I did exactly what I said I was going to do, which again, I highlighted that earlier. Our community survey is 95% of our residents. We've been, for decades, we've been doing a survey in our community. 95% of our residents love living here. We have the second lowest tax rate in the state of Florida. A third of all our land in Sarasota County is protected. Specifically to me, I have an actual voting record of supporting preservation. Specifically, I've had, my voting record is attached to 8,983.32 acres of preservation. Our fiscally conservative board, who I respect them very much, this board that I sat on and the board that I sat on previous, we've just done an amazing job with our responsibility and having our reserves. We have some massive reserves that are going to help us get through this COVID time, which is obviously concerning to all. And all of this, we maintained our top ratings with all the rating agencies. In contrast, my opponent is retired. He's a government contract supported employee. My understanding is he has had no entrepreneurial background, never had to worry about making a payroll for employees on a Friday. His campaign and his petition drive to get on the ballot was supported and funded by registered Democrats and a Democrat operative group. Hopefully, specifically, especially in today's COVID business environment, we need creative, entrepreneurial, conservative leadership to get us back on track with this COVID. And hopefully at the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance, being a business group, that I'm confident you understand hopefully those meaningful differences. So with that, Dom, I'll turn it back to you. I heard you at the beginning. That's true on my website. I'm totally accessible via email. My cell phone is on all that correspondence, including my website. So if anybody wants to grab my cell phone and text me or reach out to me for individual conversations, I'm welcome. And I can't believe it, but early voting actually starts this Saturday. So again, I'm available for any questions after this meeting. Thank you, Dom, for the time.
Mike, we appreciate you being here. You know, I can remember back, you and I ran into each other at one of the EDC meetings there in Sarasota while you were running for your last election. So I wished you well then. I'm going to wish you well again this evening. We appreciate you coming and speaking to our audience. We maintained almost 40 plus people through the whole almost hour. So that's impressive given that people have a lot of things to do these days, but we truly wish you well and thank you for being here. And thank you for what you've done for Sarasota County over the last few years. And hopefully you'll be able to get in again and do it for more. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. I think it's a great format.
Yep. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to thank the audience for sitting in and listening. We'll be doing this again on Thursday night with a few additional races. And again, next Tuesday night with races on the Democratic side as well. So I hope you're able to join us for those. For those of you who are members, and most of you are, we released our survey, our annual survey yesterday, and I sent an email out this afternoon. We sent it out a little early because we're trying to find out what we need to do for you for the fall as we make changes given the swift changes we needed to make with COVID, and we continue to make those changes for the rest of the year. But more importantly, what 2021 will look like for you as the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance continues to work for you in helping you maintain what we're doing here in our community. So thank you for being here this evening. And Mike, thanks again. Thanks to all our candidates, and I wish you all well. Have a great night.